Welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be reviewing the brand new Ketuo Dirty Bird. This is a Mitchell Picard design, and I gotta say it's an interesting one. Just wanted to show off these high polished tie scales with that vibrant anode before I start getting my fingerprints on it. I'm not trying to wear no latex gloves throughout this review. Sorry, ain't happening. So get a good look at it right now. See, that's just from my hands touching on that side. They have this version with the gold anode, but currently I think they're sold out. However, there's a version with the polish just like this one with a blue anodization on it. And these gold anode ones have a zircotai inlay, and the blue anode versions have a mochatai inlay. This is definitely a large EDC knife, coming in at 8.85 inches overall. It has a 3.74 inch blade. Check that blade out. Great utilitarian blade shape here. You have a very fine bead blasted finish. Usually not my favorite finish. However, Ketuo, Reich, they both do a lot of finishing to the blades before they actually bead blasted. So I haven't had any issues with mine corroding yet. If that ever changes, I'll definitely let y'all know. And your blade steel is down here, Bowler M390. I wish Ketuo and Reich would start using other blade steels from time to time. You have this rock chisel texture milled into the blade. I think it's a nice little touch. And if you're anything like me and you like unique knives, well then here you go. The blade has a swedge up here on the spine and then on this grind as well, which thins out that tip some so your tip's not overly thick. This one's going to be great at in-hand cuts. You're going to have full power from heel to tip because of that straight edge. And then it's going to be easy to maneuver that tip. If you need to do some very fine, intricate stuff, you should be able to do it rather easily, especially being that swedge thinned out that tip for you so it's not super thick. You can pierce into things if you needed to as well. We have a little thumb scoop right here that starts in the scales, then goes up into the blade. No jimping. However, this is very, very comfortable. I'm locked in. I don't feel like I'm going to slide off or anything. You have dual thumb studs that stay out of the cutting path, as you see there. And then you have a gold anodized titanium inlay for this thumb hole right there that is usable. We'll talk about the thumb studs and the thumb hole during the deployment section. Really wish they would have given us a little bit bigger of a sharpening choil because that's going to start to flare after the first sharpening. You can see on this side, their non-dominant hand when they're sharpening this one is already starting to flare there. So that's only going to get wider and wider every time I sharpen it. However, if I wanted to, I could open it up myself because that stop pin is way up here. You don't have to worry about that at all. We have some pretty stout blade stock thickness coming in at 0.15 with a pretty low flat grind that they still managed to get down to around 20 thousandths behind the edge. So as long as it's sharp, it still should perform really well. Let's find out. I gotta be honest, I wasn't really sure what to expect with this knife because, let's face it, it's not meant to be a super slicer by any means, but they still managed to do a fairly good job of getting it down as thin as they possibly could, being that it has a flat grind. And things like this, you know, breaking down cardboard and stuff like that, it's really gonna excel at that type of stuff and any other stuff that you would need to do tip work with. And we'll test that out in a little bit later. These contoured scales fill out the hand really, really nicely, and they're very, very comfortable. Now, we start increasing pressure more and more as we go, and I did notice right at the end, and I'm pushing as hard as I possibly can into the wood, just so I can see if there's anything that's going to poke me or anything or just be uncomfortable right around this part. Well, where the contour stops at the back part of the bottom part of the scales, it starts to get a little uncomfortable, but I mean, I'm really bearing down. So I don't think that's really going to be an issue for most people. Lift it up on the block because it's a straight edge and the tip is kind of canted down. So it would have been just a nightmare to try to do it without lifting it up like this, and I refuse to. So, but at this point, it's performing way better than I expected to. You know, like I say, I like whenever I don't really have too high of expectations for a knife, and they proved me wrong, because so far this one has proved me wrong. I don't know exactly what they sharpened it to. That might be, why it's performing good. They might not have had such a thick edge bevel like a lot of their knives come with. But I will say they definitely do a solid job on their heat treating, because I've never really had any Reich or Ketuo knife perform bad per se. Maybe I might have gotten one or so that didn't have the best edge out of box, but as soon as I sharpened it, it completely changed that right away. So yeah, they always do a great job. Never had any kind of catastrophic failure or anything. That's another place right here where it's going to shine. Doing those drag cuts. The blade's a little heavy, so it's just bending my leather. It wasn't taking much pressure, but I need to get some more thicker leather. I ran out. At this portion, all the dent stuff, it's blasting through it. It's one thing about their bead blast. It causes it to be a very slick finish, and I find it glides through materials a lot easier. So I thought this would perform way better than I ever expected. Like I said during the testing, I did not expect a whole lot from this knife. It's got chunky blade stock. It's got a fairly robust grind here. But that doesn't matter as much as long as the edge is super sharp. And this one came super sharp from factory. And it's thin enough. It's not a split maul or anything. But, it's still, it's not going to be a super slicer. Now let's take a look at the deployment action on this one. So like I said earlier, you have thumb studs that have a little bit of texture on the outside, and they're just ever so slightly sticking up above the scales. And you got this little chamfer right here. Very, very intuitive right there. It's a very snappy action. This thing comes rocketing out if you use those studs. You can also reverse flick off those studs. You can use that thumb hole to do a thumb flick. Slow roll. Let's see, you can reverse flick, but you got to be careful how you're holding this one, because the scales are polished, so it's a little bit slippery. This is a button actuated liner lock, not a top liner lock. It's just a button hooked to the actual liner lock, which you can also use that to deploy the knife also. Very, very smooth action. Once you release that lock, it's a free dropper, riding on cage ceramic bearings with a ceramic detent ball. And I mean, smooth action. Now let's take a look at the handle area. So we have beautifully contoured tie scales. You can see that nice contour on those scales. Gold anodization on mine. You can get it blue as well, like I said in the beginning. Beautiful pop of color with that zirconia inlay. I do wish it was on this side as well, but unfortunately we only get in that little piece. These are rather thick slabs of tie, as you can see there. Then you have this 3/4 length tie backspacer that has that rock texturing on it as well. Lanyard hole, and that hole is the same shape as the thumb hole. And then the rock texture is also on this blind screwed mill tie pocket clip that unfortunately is tip up right hand carry only. Sorry about that, lefties. Well, if you look on this side, you got a very clean show side. All you have is your pivot right here. I don't always like seeing flathead. I prefer Torx, but they at least give you the tool, and it's always with you if you're carrying the knife. And this is something I think they should have done a little bit better job of explaining it on the website. They just show you a picture of it and kind of leaves you wondering what to do next. So if you flip it over like this, if you press this side of the backspacer, I don't know if you heard that pop, and you can see how it's sticking up a little bit right there. Well, you slide this forward, see how it's notched right there, and then see the little hole right there? On this side, you have a ceramic detent ball. It's just in there so you don't easily pop that backspacer out. And you can see those two screws right there. They're not touching. That sits in this little channel right there. That kind of locks the scales together. And you have another locator pin right there in the middle. Well, once you get the backspacer out, you see right here, you have a flathead. That fits perfectly in the pivot like that. And you can make your adjustments if you need to. You can unscrew the pivot all the way and then swing this scale around, take it apart. And then if you look in there, you can see the button is connected to that liner lock, and they just brought the locking liner further out toward the back portion of the scales. You can see all that internal milling in there to help bring down this weight as much as possible. And you don't have a full liner, just a locking leaf liner right there on the locking side. Even with all that internal pocketing in there, like I said earlier, you have thick slabs of tie, a thick blade stock, and this is a big knife. It's still going to be pretty weighty at 6.21 ounces. I mean, I didn't think it was too heavy to carry at all, but, you know, just know that going into it. Got to be careful because this is a very slick knife, but your balance point is perfect. Look at that. Excellent job. And it definitely, with this one, it definitely makes this knife feel a lot lighter in hand, and it's a lot more agile in hand because of that balance point being perfect. Well, during the testing, when I was doing in-hand cuts, it was very comfortable for about 90% of the cutting, especially in the hammer grip because those contoured scales, you know, they're thick enough, they fill out the hand nicely. But whenever I got in that wood shaving toward the end and I'm exerting, I was exerting even more pressure than I normally do, just to see if anything was going to be poking or prodding me. And at the very end, see this edge right here where that contour ends? It's not sharp. They knocked it off ever so slightly, but just bearing down on that, it starts to get a little uncomfortable. Not something that I would be doing with this anyway normally, so it's not an issue for me. If it is for you, then you might want to pass on this one. Well, being that they put the button release liner lock on this one, I guess they were worried that if you were, you know, doing cuts like this, holding it, somehow you could accidentally disengage that liner lock, but I don't think that would be the case because you really, it's got a good bit of tension on this, and you really got to push it down. So I was never worried that I was going to actually do that. I never did disengage it. But if you are worried, they put a secondary lock, push that forward, and you can't completely depress that button right there. Now, I personally don't like seeing those because they all inevitably loosen over time, and that'll end up locking when I don't want it to. And I go to, you know, lock the knife, and it comes flying out of my hand because I sling it down. It's a pain in the butt. And just about every knife I've ever had with a secondary lock that was a switch like that, all of them, I ended up removing them or gluing them in position, like in the open position, because they all either vibrate, lock, or they get loose and they lock on you. This one, it's not super hard to push, so I could see it easily being able to accidentally engage it. It's not the end of the world, but, you know, I just don't like seeing them. Let me know what y'all think about that. Do you like seeing those secondary locks like that? Sometimes I definitely think they make sense. I think I'd still rather not have it and just be more cautious. But when it comes to the lockup, this thing is a tank. I mean, I can't muscle any play, any direction. Rock solid, just like this texture on the blade and on the rest of the knife. Now time for some quick size comparisons. As you can see, it's bigger than both the Ontario Rat 1 and 2. It's also bigger than one of my favorite Ketuos, the Brodfa, and it's a good bit bigger than the Spyderco PM2. And it's very similar in length to the Kaiser XL Beglita, and it's just a little bit bigger than the Cold Steel AD10. And lastly, it's just a hair shorter than the Bestech Fairchild, and it's just a hair longer than the Carbon Knives Buckhorn. And since no knife's perfect, one of my nitpicks and complaints, there's no lefty love here. I'm not the biggest fan of bead blast, even though I haven't had any issues with corrosion with any of the Ketuo and Reich knives. So it's just a very minor thing at this point. I do wish they would have given us a bigger sharpening choil. You can see it's already starting to flare. That's only going to get worse every time you sharpen it, and you're going to be running to this thicker plunge grind portion. Even though I think it's cool that they were able to pull off such a tight fitment inlay, I could have done without that because it'll probably eventually come out. I don't know how they probably have it glued or epoxied in there. I'm not too sure, but that's not hurting anything. It'd have been cool to have the inlay on both sides. I'm just a little bit OCD like that. Sure, it has something to do with this button. It could have given us a little bit more of a tutorial on how to tear this knife down. You know, all they do is show you a picture of this out of here so you kind of see how it works. And overall, I'm just not the biggest fan of seeing secondary locks like that. Not the biggest deal. You know, it may save my fingers one day. I don't know. And even though it looks cool when this one's all cleaned up, it looks cool in photos. If you are like myself and you like to use your knives and you don't want to see it look like that, well, then this ain't the knife for you. Or you just have to, which I may end up stone washing mine and then re-anoing it. I'm not sure yet. But those high polish finishes make the ano pop, but just take fingerprints even more and more. The oils in your fingers just fade it really, really quickly. So what are my final thoughts on the new Ketuo Dirty Bird? First off, I love the name. I know this is probably a love it or hate it knife. I personally like the aesthetics on this one. I enjoy testing it. It's got a ridiculously smooth action. It's comfortable for 98% of the things you're going to be doing. It's different looking. And even though this is still just a liner lock with a button attached to it, I like it. It makes it safer. Your fingers aren't in the cutting path when you're closing the blade. And Ketuo and Reich do such a good job with their actions anyway. The actions are just ridiculously smooth with that button liner lock. So that's going to do it for today's video. If you're interested in picking up your own Ketuo Dirty Bird, you better hurry up. Like I said, there's only blue left. I don't know if they're going to be making more of these. I'm sure they will, but this particular variant is currently sold out. I apologize. If you are interested, I will have it linked down below in the description. It will be an affiliate link, so if you want to help support what I do here in this channel, that helps me pay for my testing materials and other things for the channel. I can't thank you enough. If not, no sweat at all. Just keep coming back. I enjoy having y'all here. All right, guys and girls, I hope every single one of y'all is having a fantastic day today. And remember, keep these blades sharp. Smile more. Peace.